Welcome to the Tech for Good Southwest podcast, brought to you by Annie, Alicia and Ariel. Here at Tech for Good Southwest, we are on a mission to build momentum for the Tech for Good movement here in Bristol, Bath and across the Southwest. We're going to be joined by charities, investors, startups and initiatives to share their stories, their challenges and their successes in driving Tech for Good. Hello and welcome to the Tech for Good Southwest podcast. I'm Annie Legg, your host for this episode, and I'm here today with Richard Godfrey from Rocket Makers. Hello, Richard.
Hi, Annie. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I was just saying to you, I think, wasn't I, pleased that the sun's shining today in Bath?
Yeah, I need to get out more and enjoy it, I think, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be doing that after this for sure. So thank you so much, Richard, for joining us today. I'm really excited to sort of explore a little bit more about your journey, particularly around Tech for Good. Obviously, that's very, very close to your heart as well. I wondered if you could just first introduce yourself and a little bit about Rocket Makers.
Yeah, I would love to. Thank you. So I suppose career-wise, I've always been in the computing area. So did a computer science degree, spent some time working for a big consultancy, Deloitte, and then spent some time at Microsoft and enjoyed my time there looking at new technology and how that could apply to different environments. And then back in 2007, with a couple of colleagues, set up a company called iPrinciples, which eventually became Rocket Makers, and that was really about how do we use technology just to solve interesting problems. And we spent a lot of time over the last 15 years now of doing just that, working with a lot of interesting small startups, helping them build their ideas, then sort of growing scale-up businesses, and also some pretty big businesses who are trying to do interesting sort of app, web development and software. So that's our approach, is delivering software that solves interesting problems. And I suppose we historically try to do that around three core areas. I think I mentioned in the past with you. There's a little Venn diagram that's always sitting in my head, which is around innovation, quality, and purpose. And if we can find, for innovation is doing something new. It might be a new technology, it might be a new business model, something that's different. The quality is trying to build the right product and then build the product right. So understanding that we don't want to build things that aren't generally going to be useful, and then when we do build them, something that is of a quality that you can build and build upon. And then the purpose one, being sort of the Tech for Good area, is really how does what we do make the world a better place, and can we find some ways to tie in with ESG goals in the sorts of projects that we get to do.
Amazing, thank you. That was a good, very clear introduction. Obviously, the bit we're particularly interested in is the purpose element of your Venn diagram. And so to you, is the sort of purpose element specifically where an initiative or something or a project is social impact related?
Yeah, I think it's. Our overall vision is really to make sure that the technology that we help build has an impact across at least 50 million people, and so in that sense, we're always looking for where are the ways where technology can be used for social, economic good in ways that perhaps are pushing things forward. So a lot of our projects historically have been in sort of well-being space, in perhaps in healthcare, in fair trade. So there's lots of areas where we find lots of sort of interesting angles that provide that kind of purpose element for what we do.
So yeah, I'm interested, Richard, around whether there's a sort of set of certain criteria that you use to kind of evaluate a new project before you take it on, particularly from a sort of purpose and impact perspective.
Yeah, good question, Annie. So I suppose initially, many years ago when we were doing it, we didn't really have any of that. It was just a sort of gut reaction. But over the years, we've honed that down a lot more. I mean, I suppose the first place to start is we have a sort of ethical policy of projects. So we go through that and just make sure that it doesn't hit any of these sort of unethical areas where we just don't work in at all. And then after that, we tend to have a kind of, I suppose it's like a little bit of a due diligence process that you might have for sort of investing in things. Over the years we've invested in a lot of sort of early stage startups and built those there. And that due diligence, I suppose, is just making sure that the right approaches are being taken by the founders of those businesses, and that we can sort of feel confident that it's going to have the sort of impact that we hope it will. So these days, yeah, it's a little bit more formal, hopefully still very friendly, but we're starting to think about, really what sort of size of impact would be, what the right approaches to this project would be. And in fact, we've formalized it even more in the last year, where we've created something called the Collaboratarium, which I still can't spell when I try and write it down. But the idea with the Collaboratarium is to try and formalize the approaches that we get for the sort of pro bono use of our time to build things. So to try and coordinate those in a more simplistic way where people can apply, and then we apply, a percentage of our turnover into those sorts of projects specifically.
And what would be the difference between a project that might be suited to I want to say it now, the Collaboratarium, versus projects that would just come in a more traditional way, but are particularly social impact and purpose focused?
Yeah, often it is those that are coming from sort of charitable sources, etc., where there really is very little things that are great things to do, but really there isn't that sort of impetus or money behind it, as an example. So to give you an example of one of those at the moment is some work that we just kicked off with Fairfield House in Bath, where they're looking at how to use technology to understand who their users are, and to be able to map that out a bit more effectively. And they're a CIC; they have a lot of time and effort. The volunteering that goes on is really not directed into the use of technology, but we feel like we can add some value to that by going through that approach.
That's amazing. I'm just thinking back to, I think you said impact the lives of 50 million people through the work that you do and the software that you build.
Yeah.
Is there a way of practically measuring that within Rocket Makers? Or, yeah, I'm just really interested in how I suppose you measure that progress as a business towards that goal.
It is really hard, and we've tried very hard to get quite specific about it. So certainly, in a sense, it's a guiding light for us as much as anything. So we're not trying to overly measure the detail of it, but we want to make sure that the things that we're trying to do are moving us towards that overall. I mean, in some respects, you could say that some of the projects that we've done over the years perhaps have already hit that kind of thing. So, for example, over the years we've built and helped run the medical record system for all the Olympic athletes in the UK. So, which was used in Rio and Tokyo, and that's by the success of those teams. Maybe we played a small part in the technology that we built, helping reduce illness and injury and engaging with those. And that may have had a positive impact on the 50 million people in the UK over time. So you can sort of lend that kind of number to some extent, but we want to be a little bit more tangible than that. So we want to try and say, where we're building things, can we track the number of people that are generally using a product, and understanding that. Of course, there's some times when that just doesn't, it's just not appropriate. Obviously, we don't want to go against any GDPR or other sort of privacy concerns around who's using applications, etc. So we have to kind of take a little bit of direction from it, but without worrying too much about the detail.
Yeah, no, I think that definitely makes sense. I think that you've talked about the medical records project. Obviously, that was a very large scale and potentially still something that you're doing. Fairfield House being an example of a very sort of local based organisation in Bath. Can you talk a little bit about other projects that you've been involved with that are particularly from a sort of social impact space? Because I think it's really helpful to think about the different ways you can talk about tech for good.
For sure. I think a lot of things that we've been doing in the last few years have oriented around sort of well-being in different ways. So that's whether that's mental health, well-being, or sort of physical in approaches. So we're seeing a lot of sort of people coming at well-being from lots of different directions, often using an app to track and understand things. So we've a good example is Wave 6, which have recently created a really interesting app, and the founder there coming at it from the more data that you can understand, the more helpful it is to the decision making of the circumstances and situations that you're in. We've been doing some stuff around. In fact, in Bristol, coming into the summer is really exciting. Lots of unicorns are going to appear in Bristol. So there's done by some people who are looking at leukemia care, and there's going to be lots of painted unicorns popping up all over Bristol. And we've been helping build a trail and an app that can help with augmented reality, so that kids can engage in that and really enjoy the experience. And hopefully, it can impact in the funding process of leukemia care to deliver that going forward.
That sounds great. Can't wait to see all those unicorns. Can't we
They're
have a trail
fantastic.
in Bath as well?
Well, I think we've done lions and owls in Bath and stuff. So it's hopefully there'll be one of those coming up again soon, and we can get involved in it. But I think it's really
I
nice to
mean,
have those different types of applications. Yeah, those that are perhaps people building things for genuine sort of serious impact that's there, but also some of the more engaging, jovial, you know, aspects as well, which can just entertain people as well in the process.
but that must be also, those types of projects must be really motivating for your team as well, in terms of just a bit more light-hearted and a bit fun.
Yeah, definitely. It's really nice to have that kind of balance of things, and I guess one of the key things with hiring people into Rocket Makers is always part of that has always been people that want to have an impact and do that. So I guess it's an important sort of part of our process, and the crew here is people that care about those sorts of things. So given an opportunity to get involved in those in different ways, and whether those are big applications that might have a big reach, but also just that sort of small fun things is a nice sort of diverse set of applications to build.
So it must be challenging though to balance as a business that essentially needs to be a sustainable business, to balance between the sort of social impact work and the projects that you really, really want to do and that you're sort of designing yourselves to do, with actually also kind of trying to be financially viable. And I presume that there are times in which you have to perhaps focus more on different sorts of projects. They're still within your Venn diagram, but maybe the purpose bit is a little bit further out.
Yeah, it is really true, and I'd hate for anybody to think that we just work with sort of tech for good projects and entirely purpose oriented, because I think that would be unfair. So yeah, for me, a lot of Rocket Makers is about innovative work, and we became a B Corp last year, and I think that sort of really sets the bedrock of the kind of purpose element of what we do as a business overall. So we make sure that really there is the sort of three levels of engagement as we run the business, and but at the same time, yes, there's things that we do that are it's very hard to tie purpose as being the core part of it. Finance is a great example where we love doing some finance projects. There's some real innovation that's happening in the finance space, but it's not necessarily one that you naturally associate with purpose driven businesses. Having said that, we're working with great businesses like Seckle in the finance space, where they're really trying to make significant difference in the types of financial engagement that people have, and the opportunities that people have to invest in projects and in funds which are in the right sort of social impact space.
So you mentioned becoming a B Corp, and I think that was quite recently, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, but it seems to have taken us an awful long time to go through the process of that, and a lot of hard work actually. It's something that I thought was really important. One of the early startups that we worked with, it was a company called Neighbourly, who do a lot of sort of social impact work, and with a lot of big supermarkets, etc. And they were one of the very first B Corps in the region. So we were quite close to what they were doing with that. And then a few years later, we've sort of looked at it ourselves and thought, actually, we're doing all the sorts of things that we should be doing, and it should be quite a natural fit as a B Corp. But all of the things that we needed to adjust and document has been the interesting challenge, I think, for me. Even down to changing the whole sort of memorandum of the company, of our holding company. It's very wide reaching in the whole thinking that needs to be done in the supply chain. So it took us a while, and actually, there's so many companies really that are trying to move towards B Corp membership that there's quite a delay in getting through the approval process these days, which has got to be a good thing, I suppose.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know the focus that you have as a business in terms of the types of work that you do. So, particularly, obviously, there's focus around tech for good, social impact projects that you like to do. Did that come into that process of being a B Corp at all, or is it much more around how you're, I guess, how you're set up as an organization, not necessarily what you're doing?
It certainly touches on the sorts of projects that we do. So we certainly use those to really sort of reference and validate some of the things that we were doing. But most of it is really the core of the business. So the whole sort of governance processes that you go through, the whole team engagement, bringing people on board where they understand the overall sort of vision and values of the company. So there's a lot of stuff which is kind of just the core how you run a company, and also all the people that you deal with in the day-to-day engagement in the company. So your suppliers and customers as well. So I think what I loved about it was a really well-rounded and challenging way of looking at the business, and even though we didn't have to change any of the sorts of things we were doing because we were already doing them, just thinking about them and how we reference them and document them was it's time consuming and made you sort of take a step back and think about how you were doing things. And I think that was really helpful.
And having that certification now, do you feel any differently? Do you think that, your sort of staff feel any differently having that certification?
I suppose the things that we do hasn't changed, but I think we've had people sort of external to the company look at what we're doing and validate that against other great businesses. The interesting thing for me around that is that there's a points process, so you have to have at least 80 points in order to qualify. And some companies, like our good friends at Neighbourly, are beating that by leaps and bounds. They're in the well into the triple figures and doing astonishing stuff. And we've got more work to do around that, so we have to kind of get re-reviewed in 3 years' time, and we have to improve our scores. So the nice thing about the model is that you're always thinking about what you can do better. And I think from a team perspective, that external validation's been important. But I think it's also just knowing that we need to keep improving our game week in, week out around it is a motivator for us all.
Yeah, I think the fact that you have to recertify means that, yeah, it wasn't a just make it all good now. There's that sort of sense of actually you've got to make progress and make quite tangible progress.
Definitely.
So quite a sort of broad question for you, and it may be that you've talked about it already in terms of impacting the lives of 50 million people. But if you had a magic wand, what impact would you most like to have as rocket makers?
That's a tough question, isn't it? Yeah, I think I think we have touched on it there, but I think it's really what really excites me is how new technology can be used in a positive way to solve real sort of social and business problems. So I think we're seeing lots of change and lots of very rapid change at the moment in the world of technology. Things like you know, AI is a great example. We've been working with AI for many years, but the acceleration of that in the last sort of 6 months or so has been absolutely incredible. And it changes the way lots of things can happen in the future. And I think that's both social economic impact, but also on people's lives and jobs and those things. So I think looking at how we can use those technologies in a positive way and make them really effective. We've also been doing a lot of work in the last few years around sort of 3D, the whole idea of the metaverse and virtual reality, augmented reality. And again, there's lots of sort of doomsday elements around the way people can perceive these, but they're also fantastic ways where they can have a massive impact on reducing travel that people take and etc. So I suppose for me it's looking at these new technologies, sort of VR, AR, AI, and looking at the problems that we can help to solve, and then using the resources of rocket makers, and then collaborating with as many other people who have interesting sort of alignment with that together to make a positive use of that technology.
That's great, and I think that was a nice segue to what would is typically my sort of finisher question, which is around what does tech for good mean to you? And I think you very much defined it as how technology, particularly new technology, can be applied to social problems and social challenges.
Yeah, for sure. I suppose tech for good is also a way of that kind of collaboration. We talk about the collaboratorium and the word that's there, but it's also about how do we use technology and work together as a sort of wider society to create things that are going to have the biggest impact. So I think that kind of collaboration between sort of like-minded organisations and is a great opportunity. And for me, there's elements of the B Corp piece which fit into that. It might just be a badge, but it actually does give you some indication of these people care enough to go through the process and are great people potentially to work with on solving some of the problems that are out there. So I think, it's using technology, looking at real problems that are there, perhaps looking at the whole sort of ESG space, and then collaborating with other like-minded people to have some useful impact in the process.
Yeah, I absolutely sort of agree 100% around all of that. And that's a sort of broad picture of what Tech for Good can be and what it can mean. What would your hopes be for us as a region around Tech for Good? And I know that you in particular do a lot to support growth across the region, do a lot of support in that space. So interested in what you think may be possible for us to do as a region around that kind of Tech for Good agenda.
Yeah, well, I think we do pretty well. I think it's easy to look at all the things that aren't going well in this space, but actually, I think as a region we do really, really well. And it's people like you and Dot Project and lots of the other different organisations that try and join the dots and connect people up that are trying to do similar things. That's really helpful around that. I think this whole Bath, Bristol, in fact, the broader Southwest region just has I suppose a natural way of collaborating. People don't often see a sort of competitive situations. I think they're looking for the collaborative opportunities that are there, and I think that's a real positive. So I think we should celebrate what is great about this region, in that we do a pretty good job of doing some interesting things and working together to do that. I'm sure there's always more that we can do, and hopefully things like podcasts like this and stuff can get a wider audience and people engaging with those people who are active in this space, and actually that then just accelerates everything.
Yeah, I love that particularly. I mean, I guess the purpose of this podcast was also to surface the fact that actually there is a lot of amazing tech for good in this region, in lots of different perspectives. Organizations like Rocket Makers, of course, but actually what are charities doing around digital and technology? What are our sort of new startups? What are the problems that people are looking to solve, and the challenges that they have as well? So I think that creating that space for reflection, but also doing as much as we can, collaboration being an absolute key to that. So thank you so much for sharing a little bit about Rocket Makers and your journey, but particularly the types of Tech for Good projects that you work on. And maybe we can just finish with how people might apply to Collaboratorium or get in touch if they have got a Tech for Good project that they'd be interested in talking to you about.
Yeah, absolutely. So certainly rocketmakers.com is our website, and on there's a page about the Collaboratorium which gives details. There's a form that people can fill in to apply for that. So yeah, please just search for Collaboratorium and Rocket Makers, and or drop me an email. So richard@rocketmakers.com. Be very pleased to hear from anybody that has any interesting things that they'd love to do.
Absolutely. And I know for a fact that you're very welcome and open to all ideas and having conversations about those. So don't be nervous and bring forward your amazing Tech for Good ideas. Thank you so much, Richard. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you today.
Thanks, Annie. Likewise, as always. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye.